let us pray and begin. Our dear God in heaven, we want to thank you for this blessed Sabbath day. Thank you for this class that we are beginning. We are asking that you be with us, you lead our minds, so that we can be united in the messages that you have bestowed upon us. We ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, I think I'm clear now. What I'm going to do. Okay. I want to do a review of what we did last Sabbath. We are trying to understand the start of the nature of humanity, how it began in the year 2017. And I think there is somewhere where we left, so we are going to continue from there, but I'm going to do a quick review, recap, then we'll proceed. So I think in the year 2017, we have Elder Pamina coming with the study of the nature of humanity. And I think what we did, we tried to understand why we studied this study of the nature of humanity. In that year, 2017, there was a prediction of midnight, which was leading us to the Sunday Law Waymark. So when we come to the year 2017, this is 2017, there was a prediction given pointing us to midnight. Then from midnight, we are going to understand the Sunday Law Waymark. So for this start of the nature of humanity to be taught in this history, the great importance of this study was to enable us as God's people to live in this history without sin, in this history of the Sunday Law. Like we are required to develop character, and this character, it's going to be revealed in the waymark of the Sunday Law. So when the start of the nature of humanity began in the year 2018, there were many challenges, many questions. The members in the movement were not understanding exactly. Elder Pamina labored to show what it means to understand the nature of humanity by reading some quotes. Like we have a quote read in this history from the Review and Herald, November 20, January 10, 1882, paragraph 1. In this Review and Herald, we want to understand the nature of humanity, how the human beings are. Then in the Review and Herald, like the other Sabbath, I'm not going to dwell upon this, but in this Review and Herald, we were told like the nature of humanity is in threefold. The Review and Herald is going to show us the threefold nature. And there is a training in the quote, there is a training which is required to train a child in the way it should go. So the training is encompassing upon this threefold nature, which we found like it is the intellectual, the physical, intellectual, the moral, and the physical powers. This is what we got from the Review and the Herald. Then I remember we read from the book, Education, the Book of Education 14.4, but we began from point 1 and point 2. In point 4, we understood, like in order to understand the work of education, we need to understand the reason why God created the human beings, the purpose of God creating the human beings, and let me open the book. In order to understand what is comprehended in the work of education, we need to consider both the nature of man, that is the nature of humanity, and the purpose of God in creating them. We need to consider also the change in man's condition through the coming in of a knowledge of evil and God's plan for still fulfilling the glorious purpose in the education of the human race. So, like these two quotes, we find like they're connected with the aspect of education. Like the two quotes, they're connected with the aspect of education. So, like, we need to understand these powers, how they are working. This is the humans. Then we need also to understand, before the fall of the human race, why God created the human family. And when they had a knowledge of evil, there is this education which is going to restore this human race to the original plan of God. Then we went through this history in the year 2017, like the people were not clearly understanding the difference between the nature, that is the physical body, and these powers. Then we read from the book of Adventist Home, like we read from Adventist Home, 127, paragraph 2. And in the book of Adventist Home, this is where we dwell much of our study. We found, like in the Adventist Home, there is a subtopic, our bodies are purchased possession. The lower passions have their seat in the body and work through it. The words flesh or fleshly or carnal lust embrace the lower, corrupt nature. The flesh of itself cannot act contrary to the will of God. We are commanded to crucify flesh with the affections and the lusts. How shall we do it? So, like when we were trying to understand before we read Adventist Home, I think we read the 13.5. So in the healthful living, it showed us we need to understand the laws that are governing the physical. Like, let me not paraphrase. So in this book, this is what we read. We have special duties resting upon us. We should be acquainted with our physical structure. Like we should be acquainted. It was an answer in this history of these powers versus the physical body. Because many members in this history were understanding the physical body to be the human beings. But from the quote, we are going to find, like we are required to understand, we should be acquainted with our physical structure. And this physical structure, and like we should be acquainted with this physical structure and the laws that are governing this physical structure, and the laws that are controlling the natural life. So I said, like this physical structure is equals to the natural life. This is what we were trying to understand in that history, that is in 2017. Then I continued reading. While Greek and Latin, which are seldom of any advantage, are made a study by many physiology, and I are barely touched upon. The study to which to give thought is that which concerns natural life, a knowledge of oneself. It is the house in which we live that we need to preserve, that we may do honor to God who has redeemed us. We need to know how to preserve the living machinery. So, like from the quote, what we understood, like this physical body is equals to the house. This is the house where the human beings are living. It is the house. So from this, then we dwelt upon Adventist Home 127.1. We are trying to understand like these physical powers. Ellen White is going to introduce another term, like the physical powers. Then we have the higher powers in the Adventist Home 127.2. We understood like we have the higher powers and the lower powers. This is from this Adventist home. Then we saw like the lower powers, they have their seat in the body. They have their seat in the body, they sit in the body. And they are working through the body. Then we were trying to understand that when the lower powers, they have their seat in the body and they're working through the body. What are we commanded to do from the court? We are commanded, like in this understanding of the year 2017, we were commanded to subject the lower powers to the higher powers of the mind. That is like to live a righteous life. That this is what we are understanding in this history in 2017 all the way to 2020. Like there is a subjection, there must be a subjection. That is from the quote. When we are commanded to like Christ is not going to reign in a divided throne. So we are commanded to crucify the flesh. How are we going to do it? It's a question from the quote. I'm just paraphrasing because of time. I don't think, yeah, I'm not going to read. So we were questioning ourselves, how were we going, like the quote is going to ask, Ellen White will ask, how are we going to end sin? Because this stand of the nature of humanity is dealing with the issue of sin problem. So we found like in this history, 2017, Ellen White will say from Adventist Home 127.2, like we are commanded to crucify self. Self is part of these physical powers. So are we going to inflict pain on the body is a question? Then no, we are commanded to subject. So we understood in this history 2017, like the lower powers should be subjected to the higher powers. This is what we understood in 2017. Then from this quote, we tried, there is a question that Elder Emma asked, like, are the lower powers bad? Then we came to understand like the lower powers and the higher powers, this we were given by God, this is us. They are not bad. But when we act contrary to the will of God, that is when we can say like we have made, like we have acted in the wrong way. This is what we did in the last Sabbath. Then I think I left in the book Adventist Home. This is where we're going to begin our class today, in the book of Adventist Home. This is Adventist Home 327. It is paragraph 1. Adventist Home 327, paragraph 1. And I think I promised, like we are going to begin from the quote Adventist Home 327, paragraph 1, in connection to this history. When we were in 2017, there is a prediction of midnight, which is leading us to the Sunday law waymark. And this Sunday law waymark, we are required to have Christ-like character. There is a requirement for God's people in this history to develop character that is going to be revealed. So Adventist 120. 327. Paragraph 1. So in the Adventist home, the history to be repeated is a subtopic from the quote. Like there is a history which is going to be repeated in this history of Ellen White when they are preparing for the great test, which was to lead them to the close of probation, then usher in the second advent. So there is this, the history to be repeated. This is a subtopic in this quote. So I'm going to read, and so I'm going to read. I would ask that we open the quotes. We read together because I like ask some questions, and we can be able to understand what the quote is saying in this its original intent. Then we make application to our time in connection to the message of the nature of humanity. So near the close of this earth's history, Satan will work with all the powers in the same manner and with the same temptations wherewith Satan tempted ancient Israel just before their entering the land of promise. So like in the quote, what we are going to see, Ellen White is going to compare two histories. The history, that is, the people of God living near the end of this, the close of this earth's history, and the history of ancient Israel when they were at the borders of the earthly Canaan. That is, when they were nearing, like crossing the borders, then to enter the promised land, that is earthly Canaan. So, like in this, the history, that is, we need to understand how that history occurred, what happened, the kind of temptations God's people faced, the Jewish nation, when they were about to enter the promised land. So she's going to say, that is Ellen White, like the temptations God's people endured in that history will be repeated to us who are living near the close of this earth's history. That is, in that history of 1880, that is, in the history of 1888, 1893 to the second advent. Then when we are reading, like when Elder Paminda was reading this quote, Elder Paminda was trying to apply to show God's people like there is a problem with sin, like we need to come out of sin because we are nearing the close of this earth's history. Satan will lay snares for those who claim to keep the commandments of God. So when we come to this history of the past history of that is in the history of Ellen White, we know like the Sabbath keepers, that is Seventh-day Adventist Church, in that history when they were preparing for the great test, Satan was targeting them because Satan understood like they were keeping the law of God, that is, more special, they were keeping the Sabbath, that is the first 4 commandments in their time. So when you compare this history, like in that history of Ellen White and the ancient Israel, they were both Sabbath keepers. But from the quote, Ellen White, through inspirations, is going to say, Satan will lay snares for those who claim to keep the commandments of God and who are almost on the borders of the heavenly Canaan. Like when we compare the two histories, that is ancient Israel, this is ancient Israel, when they were at the borders to enter the earthly Canaan, what we get is Satan brought temptations that made like overthrew almost many people in this history before entering this promised land. This is the land of promise, earthly Canaan. This is ancient Israel when they were nearing, like crossing the borders. That is, this is Jordan, like they were about coming to the river Jordan to cross the river, then enter the promised land, that is Canaan. Then Ellen White will compare this history with their history, that is the history of 1888. Then Elder Bamida is going to highlight the quote, teach it in application to this history, that is from the year 2017, leading the people, the movement, who are then members of this movement. I was one of them, heading to the Sunday law, which will lead us to the close of this arts history. Satan will lay snares, I'm repeating, for those who claim to keep the commandments of God and who are almost on the borders of the heavenly Canaan. Satan will use the powers to the uttermost in order to entrap souls and to take God's professed people upon their weakest points. So, like what we can find, like in these people, God's people, ancient Israel, they were tempted upon their weakest points. Weakest points. I'm just using a comparison of the two histories. Then when we come to ancient, the history of Ellen White, that is in this history, that is in the history of 1888. Then, past this history of 1888 to our own time, we are going to compare the two histories and understand how Satan is going to work and tempt those people who claim to keep the commandments of God. So Satan will use the weakest. This is weakest point. Why? Like the people of God, they are nearing. That is, they are at the borders of heavenly Canaan. So you find like in ancient Israel were tempted in their weakest points. Also modern Israel, that is the alpha of our history, they were going to be tempted on the weakest points. So when we come to 2017, the same thing is going to happen towards people, the movement, who are preparing for the great test, which is the Sunday law, which will lead us to the close of probation, then second. Those who have not brought the lower passions into subjection to the higher powers, they are. So when we come to Adventist home, 127.2, when we are commanded to crucify self, the question is asked by Ellen, how are we going to do it? Are we going to inflict pain on the body? Then she says no. Like we are to subject the lower powers to the higher powers of the being. Then she's going to repeat the same same language in Adventist Home 327.1, like the people of God, their weakest point, she's going to show us, like the people of God, their weakest point is those who have put the lower actions into subjection. Lower passions into subjection to the higher powers. Higher powers of their being. I think this is what we are trying to understand. This is to 2017, 2018, and 2019, even to 2020. So you find like what we are understanding here, the prophet is telling us, for us to overcome sin, we need to subject the lower powers to the higher powers of the mind. Then ancient Israel, this is how Ellen White understood, and this is what she's trying to explain to God's people to understand how they would overcome sin before the great test comes. But I think the development is done, which we can be able to understand how these powers are working, like the lower powers and the higher powers, how they are working. But in this history, this is what we can be able to understand. Like those who have not subjected their lower powers to that is the lower passions into subjection to the higher powers of their being, then these are the ones Satan is going to target and cause their fall prior to their entering the promised land, that is heavenly Canaan. Those who have allowed their minds to flow in a channel of carnal indulgence and the baser passions. So, like when we were trying to understand it from Adventist home, we saw like this carnal. This has caused me to remember from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 1, where Paul is going to speak to the people at Corinth that who are not spiritual but who are carnal. And what we found last Sabbath is to be carnal, this is enmity with God. So, like when Ellen White is going to speak from that point of Paul speaking to the people at Corinth, like they are carnal, I think I explained that the carnal mind, these are the people who are like not converted. So you find like Ellen White is want to use these words from in this passage to teach the people to understand exactly what they are required to do to overcome sin. They should not be carnal to overcome sin. They need to move out of this carnal mindedness, minding upon these things which cannot change their nature. Baser passions, Satan is determined to destroy with the temptations to pollute their souls with licentiousness. So these are the things like I'm going to highlight, like those who have not brought the lower passions into subjection to the higher powers of their being, Satan is going to tempt them. And Ellen White will identify like those who have allowed, they have allowed their minds to flow in the same channel of carnal indulgence. Indulgence of baser passions and these are the people that is going to get those who allow their minds to flow in the same channel, that is of carnal indulgence and the baser passions. So when we go back to the fall of the human race, like I'm trying to understand why she's saying this, we saw like when Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden were instructed not to eat from the fruit from the forbidden tree, then when we are trying to understand what entails the lower passions, we found like the lower passions, they have desire, they have lust, and these lower passions, they are carnal. So like these people in this history, like the ones Satan is going to tempt, these are the ones who are quick in judgment, like they are using this carnal mind, the lower powers, to make decisions, which definitely they will run into wrong conclusions. These are the ones Satan will use to and tempt them so that they cannot be able to finish the journey. That is like this is what I understand, and many other ways that everybody has ability to understand more than what I've said. Then Satan is not aiming especially at the lower and the less important marks, but Satan makes use of the snares through those whom Satan can enlist as agents to allure and attract men to take liberties which are condemned in the law of God. So, like when I was trying to understand the quote, like you find like Satan is not interested with those people who don't have strong influence. Like he is interested with those who have strong influence, and these are the ones he will use to mislead souls. Like I remember when we can read the snares of Satan from the Great Controversy, what we find like Satan will lead the leading ministers to his side. Then the members that is in that history, also in the same history, this history of 1888. 1888, that is from 1880s to the year 1888. Like the members of the church will be led to believe upon the ministers. The ministers are led by Satan. Then these ministers are the right hand of Satan to mislead souls. So you find like this is the same target Satan has in this history and also in our own time. Like in the history 2017, then when we are going to make an application to our own time, like Satan is going to make sure that he has the key leaders, those teachers who are teaching these messages. Then when he will allure these teachers, through the teachers, he will mislead souls to eternal ruin. And the men, that is the humans in responsible positions, teaching the claims of God's law, whose mouths are filled with arguments in vindication of the law, against which Satan has made such a raid. Over such, Satan sets the hellish powers and agencies at work and overthrows them upon the weakest point in their character. So like the leading teachers. So what we are getting, like Ellen White is comparing this history with the ancient Israel, and also Elder Bamida is going to take the quote and then make it applicable to our own time. That is in our own history. This history when the movement is proclaiming the last 6 commandments. But before the last 6, that is, we were not understanding the nature of the Sunday law in 2017 in the correct way. Until the midnight cry message came, this is what clarified, like we are going to be tested about gender issues, the message of gender equality, which is connected with the last 6 commandments. So you find like in this history, in an Adventist home, Ellen White is going to highlight like the leaders, that is the teachers. Satan is targeting the teachers so that these teachers will be the agents that are going to mislead souls. So, like when we go backwards from the quote, we find that in this history of 2017, like these teachers, these are the ones who never subjected their lower powers to the higher powers of the mind. This is what Elder Bamida is terming as childish when we are going to continue following the development of this start of the nature of humanity, when we are trying to understand exactly what is the true definition of sin, how the message has developed from where we were to the present time where we are today. So we find like these teachers in this history, these were those who are teaching the claims of the first 4, the law of God, that is the entire law, quote and quote, that is the first 4 commandments, who are proclaiming Sabbath sanctity, but they have not subjected their lower powers to the higher powers of the mind. They are the target of Satan, so that if Satan will have them, then Satan is going to mislead souls. This is what we are understanding, but I think we have developed from subjection of the lower powers to the higher powers of the mind in order to overcome it. Then over such, Satan sets the hellish powers and his agencies at work and overthrows them upon the weakest points in their character. I have identified like the weakest point from the previous like lines we have read, we saw like those who have not subjected their lower powers to the higher powers of their mind, they are using the canon and the pensa passions. That is, they have allowed their minds to run in the same channel by using this carnal indulgence and the pensa passions to make decisions. These are the ones, this is their weakest point, and these are the ones that Satan is targeting, and they are not common people. These are the men of talent and a pleasing address, men who have strong influence over the members. These are the ones Satan is going to use so that Satan can be able to reach the rest of the members, that is the church of God. Then,
Hi, Jackie.
yes?
I had a hand up, so I'm not sure if you are taking any hands or not.
Okay, like I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I had my hand up and I just wanted to ask something. So I'm not sure if you are taking any hands or you'll do that at the end.
Okay, I've not actually gone there to see, but you can speak. You can continue.
Oh, okay. So,
Yes.
So we are looking at 2017, isn't it? How we
Yes.
understood the nature of humanity.
Yes.
And I was just wondering how we understood at that time what it means to have our lower passions subjected to the higher powers. Like, how did we understand it then? So that, because I also want to understand how we saw things then and then how we are looking at things today. So I don't know if you can help or someone can help.
Okay, like it's a good question. I think we read from Adventist Home 127.2, and in the quote, that is where Ellen White is going to say, okay, let me read Adventist Home 127.2. I'm sorry, those who are willing, like who need to ask questions, you can open the mic and ask. So our bodies are purchased possession. The lower passions have their seat in the body and work through it. The words flesh or fleshly or carnal lust embrace the lower corrupt nature. The flesh of itself cannot act contrary to the will of God. We are recommended to crucify the flesh with the affections and the lust. How shall we do it? Shall we inflict pain on the body? No, but to put to death the temptation to sin. The corrupt thought is to be expelled. Every thought is to be brought into captivity to Jesus Christ. All animal propensities are to be subjected to the higher powers of the soul. The love of God must reign supreme. Christ must occupy an undivided throne. Our bodies are to be regarded as the purchased possession. The members of the body are to become the instruments of righteousness. So from the quote, this is where we understand, like in this history 2017, like there is this subjection of the lower powers to the higher powers. Then from there the message has developed. So like I don't know whether I've answered your question or
Not
not.
really. So my question is, I understand there's the idea of subjecting lower powers to higher powers, but
Yeah.
like, because we read those quotations and that history, right? And we're trying to understand the issue of sin and how we can conquer sin. So now I'm trying to understand, okay, how did we process that? How did we end up understanding it in real time? Like, what does it mean to subject our lower powers to higher powers?
Okay, thank you. Like in subjection means like in that history, that is what we were understanding. Like we have to subject our, like in every step of our decisions should be like the lower powers. We have to depend upon the will to make decisions for these lower powers to act. Like this is what I understand, like subjection, it is the matter of the will. Like the will, we understood back then, like the will is the governing power in the nature of humanity. So if the will is the governing power in the nature of humanity, then we understood like these lower powers should obey the will. Like the lower powers should obey the will in making decisions. That is how, like we were trying to understand, like the lower powers to subject means obeying, like they should obey the governing power, which is the will in the nature of humanity. I don't know whether it's clear now.
Well, okay, it's fine. You can continue. I guess I was just thinking that when we speak about the will, this is the decision making
Yes.
aspect of our nature, right? And there's nothing that we do without making a decision, right? So I guess for me, I just wanted to understand how that translated to the practical life of how we ended up understanding how to go about life and sin and all of that. Because just wanted to understand those foundations so that when we are making any changes today, we are saying, okay, that was childish thinking. So how are we understanding it today? But it's okay. You can continue, or if anyone else has.
Yeah, I think the issue is the challenge we are facing today. When we go back and understand how we were understanding in 2017, we have developed, like the message has developed. When the message has developed, like going back to understand how we were trying to understand in that history, which Elder Bamida says is childish, you see, like how is it going to work out? Because in that line of Ellen White was not using this the scientific understanding of the mechanism of this physical body, how it works in relation to the will. So I think this is the challenge, but we need to understand how we have developed these truths, as how the truth has developed from 2017 all the way to what we understand today. Because I know like there is this challenge we have when we understand today, like the lower powers, they work independently of the higher powers. Like when we have understood that way, then when we go back to 2017, it becomes so hard for us to see how we understand it. But that is when the message, how it began and where it is today, the development, how it has developed.
But isn't the lower power supposed to be under the subjection of the law?
Sorry?
Isn't the lower power supposed to be under the subjection of the law of God? Law of God and our bodies?
Like I'm not understanding exactly what you are saying.
The law of our passions or our body, isn't that supposed to be under subjection to God's law?
Like the lower powers, are they not supposed to be subjected to God's law? Is that your question?
Under subjection of God's law.
Yeah, that's the question, Jackie.
Sorry?
Okay, like I'm not.
No, that is the question. She's asking, aren't the lower powers supposed to be under subjection to God's law?
Like how the lower powers are supposed to be subjected to God's law.
Yeah.
Yeah, under.
Okay, like today, what we understand all in that is in the year 2017. Because I said like this is a development, how we should understand how the study began, then progressively we can move and see how this is working out today. So, like in this history, when the study is developing, it has begun in 2017. We see like there is this subjection, and we understand like in making anything, like in making any decision, you have to depend upon the will. in like when let me give an example of the truths. Once a person receives the truth, the information is stored in the mind. When the information is stored in the mind, then when you are required to develop or to do something in accordance to God's will, then we were required to, or actually, even like we are required to decide in accordance to the light we have, so that we can make right decisions. But you find like when we say the lower powers are required to subject to the higher powers of the mind, like in 2017, we meant like every step, the lower powers should be controlled. They must be controlled by the higher powers. But what we understand today, the lower powers, they're automatic, like they are not controlled. They don't depend upon the will. Like they are created, how they are not depending upon the will. And like when they are not depending upon the will, they are independent, regardless they are working in an harmonious way. They are independent of the lower powers, the higher powers. So when we say like these lower powers are required to be subject to God's law, it is somehow complex. Me, I say like it's somehow complex because these lower powers, yes, they are required to be subjected to the higher powers. They are not required to be subjected to the higher powers, but when we make like okay, like when we were in this history, I think to understand like they are required to obey the dictate. That is the will. They are required to obey the will. But when the message began to develop to where we are today, we find like these lower powers, they don't obey the will. They work automatic. When they are working automatically, and their job function is to protect us in any emergency. So like in that 2017, I don't know how to explain in that aspect. I'm limited in the year 2017 as to say like these lower powers are required to subject to the higher powers of the mind. But when we come to 2020, we are going to see a different story, how the message is going to develop, and they show us like there is more of what we were understanding in 2017. So it is so complex to me for now to say how these lower passions in 2017 are required to subject to the lower power, to obey God's law. That is what I can say is what we were understanding in 2017, it is subjection. And this subjection, we have come to understand like subjection is not all that what these lower powers are not subjected to the higher powers. They work independently. So I don't know whether I have answered you, please. And
For
I'm
me, I guess
requesting like that. Yes?
Yeah.
I'm requesting like let us remain in 2017 before we come to fast brain and slow brain, then we come to parasympathetic and sympathetic. Those are new. That is the development of the message. Let us stick how it began, then we move progressively how the message developed.
Yes, yes. For me, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I was trying to understand how we understood things. So if I can summarize, we're basically saying in 2017 how we understood the studies that we had. We're saying that basically there's something wrong with the lower powers, and they're the ones that are causing us to sin, and they need to be controlled in order for us to overcome sin. Is that what we're saying?
I'm sorry? Like?
Okay, like basically, yeah, we are saying that when we understood the nature of humanity in that time period, we were saying that there's something wrong with the lower passions. They are the ones that cause us to sin, and therefore they need to be subjected to the higher powers of our being in order to overcome sin.
That is actually what we were trying to understand, like they were bad. At one point, we were trying to say like they were bad, but they were not. They are not bad unless we act. Like when we act, that is how we can view them as like the actions are the ones which like we tend to like make us to see like they are bad. But remember, these lower powers, God has them. God gave us the lower powers. So from this quote, let us continue from where we were. Like we were in Adventist home. So in Adventist home, we were trying to see how this history of ancient Israel was repeating to the history of Ellen White. Then to our own time, we make a diligent application and understand exactly. Well, like, okay, like in 2017, we were not even understanding the message of gender equality. We were understanding Sunday Sabbath law to be passed in the United States, then from United States to the rest of the world. Like the quote is saying, let me repeat to have a flow. Like over such, Satan sets the hellish powers and agencies at work and overthrows them upon the weakest points in their character, knowing that those who offend on one point, they are guilty of all, thus obtaining complete mastery over the entire human being, that is over the entire human's mind, soul, body, and the conscience are involved in the ruin. If Satan, if this, like the person be a messenger of righteousness and had great light, or if the Lord has used that person that had used them as their special worker in the cause of truth, then how great is the triumph of Satan? How Satan exalts, how God is dishonored. Like when we find like in this history, when the quote is read, that is in the history of 2017, like those who will not be subjecting their lower powers to their higher powers of their being, these are the ones who will allow their minds to run through the channel of this carnal indulgence and the lower baser passions. Then these are the ones Satan is going to use. And we have seen from the quote, these were teachers who are leading the people. When once Satan will rule men's souls, then this will be a dishonor, a disgrace to God, because Satan will claim these are your messengers. How they have failed to be so difficult. So you find like it has some lessons that we need to learn even today. Like when this study is developing, it has developed to where we are today. We need to understand the truth and how we need to overcome sin. How are we going to live a righteous life? How we, like when we come to this is to our own time, you find like in 2017, this is God's church, God's movement, which God has raised. God has bestowed us with the truths. We have labored to teach these truths. So when we have labored and we have not like overcome or overcome our sins, like we have not lived in accordance with the truths we teach, Satan will be very happy because we are doing the work of ruining souls. So, and this will bring dishonor to God. So it was a challenge. I was reading this. I tried to apply to my own life, and I saw like it is serious. We need to understand, more especially this study of the nature of humanity. We need to develop with this study how it has developed to where we are today, so that we can be able to be overcomers. not to bring dishonor to God, not to like to cause dishonor to God, and Satan will exalt. I think who has a question or a suggestion, addition from the quote that we have said?
I just wanted to say thank you for such a great message, the way you're presenting. Thank you very much. Scary, but
Okay,
great message. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Was another? Who feels to add? So, like, this is what we were understanding in 2017, and throughout the entire 2017, 2018, this is how we were understanding. This is the study of the nature of humanity. Like, we were required to subject the lower powers to the higher powers of the mind. When we come to 2020, so when we come to 2020, so when we come to 2020, I'm going to do some small study on the year 2020. So when we come to 2020, like this was 2017. So like what I will conclude in 2017, we are trying to understand, like we have the higher powers. And what we have also the lower powers. What we found in 2017 is like the lower powers, the conclusion we had is the lower powers are to be subjected to the higher powers of the mind in order for Christ to reign on an undivided throne. This is what we were trying to understand. This is what we actually understood in 2017. So when we come to 2020, we are going to begin with a study of hermeneutics. This study is done by the Bamida 2020, and this is a continuation of this study, like the study of hermeneutics. Like there are like some words, and the Bamida is going to give a definition, like hermeneutics, which we understand, like hermeneutics is the science and the art that is the science and the art of studying God's word. Biblical texts. This is in the year 20, that is 2020. That is how Indapamida began. Then there is another word like Indapamida gave a revelation. Yes. Somebody wants to speak. Okay, like there is this. It's very difficult for me to pronounce synecdoche. And metonymy. These are words like this study the committee is going to do it in 2020. Then is going to say the meaning of this synecdoche is it is used, the word is used, it means like a part. I'm not giving the exact definition, but I'm going to say like it represents a part, means a part is equal to the whole. Then metonymy, this is like let me say a metaphor whereby we use the issue of comparison. So, like from this study, then Indapamida is going to show us, like when in studying God's word, okay, like in studying God's word, in most cases we use this synecdoche. Synecdoche, this is a part which is equal to the whole, instead of understanding the hermeneutics, which is the science and the art of studying the biblical texts, and also this metonymy. Then Indapamida is going to show us, like when is going to connect this study with the study of the nature of humanity, but is going to show us like in most cases we use the first. Is going to introduce the aspect of the first brain, and it's going to show us like most cases we use this first brain in studying God's word. Then he's going to give an example of Ellen White, like when we are using synecdoche, studying God's word, which is connected with the first brain. Then before he gives this example of Ellen White, he's going to show us, like when we use this first brain, the first brain is always on alert. Like the first brain is like on alert, like very active. And when it is active, like in this first brain, its job function is going to show us like it is there to give protection. So when we use this first brain in studying God's word, then we are going to end into wrong conclusions. So using the first brain, we will end in wrong conclusions. Then it showed us like we have this aspect of the fast brain and the slow brain. So then the slow brain is in sleeping mode. And like this slow brain is connected with reason. So like when the slow brain is in sleeping mode and it is connected with the reason, then the fast brain is on alert and it's active and it is there to protect us in case of any emergency. So like this is what is going to show us, and this fast brain is going to align the fast brain with the lower powers. Then we came to understand like this lower powers is equal to the fast brain, and it's on alert. It is on alert and active. Most of the time it's very active, and it is to protect us in any emergency. Like when we were trying to understand in 2017, I was trying to rewrite these studies, more especially this and this one of 2017, when we were like trying to say like the lower powers should be subjected to the higher powers of the mind. Then we were not understanding like these lower powers, their job function. Like we were not understanding what is their work. Then when we come to these 2020 studies, we want to understand like this first brain, it is the lower powers, and their job function is they are on alert, they are awake, they are not asleep. In any emergency, they are there to protect us. And in this emergency, they are not to awaken, they are not going to awaken. In an emergency, they are not going to awaken. That is the will to decide in that emergency. Like he gave an example of it is at night. Like I'm using the same example, like when it's night, you are walking in a street, and next in that street, there is a restaurant. Then the person who is going to come out of that restaurant, when there is a flash of light, then you can be able to see that person carrying a knife. Then what is your second thought? These lower powers, the first brain, like how they act, like they act by like one in this emergency. There's one action of the lower this first brain, that is either fight, flight, or freeze. So you find like this fight, flight, freeze is not an issue. Like you have seen a person carrying a knife, and the communication is you either fight, run, or freeze. These actions are not depending upon the will to make decisions. Like you cannot depend upon the will to decide what you will do in that situation that you are in. Or you are in a pitch. Let me give another example. Like you are in a pitch and you are seeing some waves coming very fast towards you. Then what are you going to do? You will not decide, let me wait and see what will happen. What you will do, this is the first brain, it will immediately act. Like your eyes will open wide. You are like when your eyes will open wide, then you will move without deciding. You don't decide. So when in 2017, which is the childish way of understanding this study, it was like required when you see anything, you have to subject to the higher powers of the mind, that is the will, to make decisions. But when we were trying to understand when we come to 2020, we are going to see like these lower powers, they are working independently of the higher powers. And they are there for protection in any emergency. They are there to protect us. When they are there to protect us, what are they doing? They are going to make like steps. That is, if you see a person coming with a knife, you will just run fast Then when you are away from that person, then that is when you will ask yourself questions. Why was I running? Because that person was not even running to me. He never asked me anything. Why was I running? That is now reason. You begin to reason why you ran away. So you find that when we come to pray, in studying God's word, we will find ourselves running into like making wrong conclusions, because this first brain is working independently of the slow brain. Like they don't work, the first brain is not depending upon the slow brain. Then when we were using this synecdoche, where in studying the God's word, we'll give an example and the issues of vaccine. We read some portions of Ellen White. Ellen White is going to say drugs are bad, drugs are poisons in the human body. Then when we read that, so we think like that portion of Ellen White speaking about drugs, it's like the whole thing in regard to drugs.
Sorry, my sound wasn't working. I can't hear.
I think Jackie is muted. She's back now.
Oh gosh.
I think I'm back. So I think I'm going to make my conclusion here in this year 2020 and understand like when we use synecdoche to read or to study God's word, definitely we are running to wrong conclusions. And we have seen the first brain, which is equal to the lower powers, they are working independent of the higher powers. Then the slow brain, which is the higher powers, it is in sleep mode. Like we have to awaken it to make decisions, or to like we are required, if it is a matter of studying God's word, we should use this the slow brain, because it's associated with the reasoning. And like as I think we are familiar with these studies, what we find like in 2020, how we were understanding in 2017, all the way before this study, we were trying to understand like these lower powers should be subjected to the higher powers of the being to make like the will to make decisions. But when we come to 2020, we find like the lower powers, that is the first brain, it is there to protect us in an emergency, and it is working independently. It's not depending upon the higher powers of the mind. Then when we want to study God's word, we are required to use the slow brain, not the fast brain. If we use the fast brain, it is like we are going to make wrong conclusions. So I think this is what's developed from subjection of the higher powers to the lower powers to the higher powers. Then we understood like the first brain, which is the lower powers, they are working independently, and that is how we are created. Like they are there to protect us in an emergency. They don't depend upon the will. Like I'm going to stop here. If anybody has a comment, can comment, or a question, then we finish.
No, just thank you. Great studies, Natalie. Thank you.
Jackie, I wanted to ask how you see what we know in 2020 now. How has that changed what we said in 2017? Or do you think we're still thinking about that? Because they seem to be two different concepts in a way, but or building on the same concept. But what's the difference or the change do you see? Can you hear me?
Okay, like I'm not. No.
Oh,
I'm not hearing what you're saying. Like,
I'm just wondering what you think the difference is, what we've actually learned, what's changed. Has anything changed? And what's changed from 2017 to 2020? If you could summarize that change.
okay. Like when we were in 2017, what we were understanding, the lower powers are required to be subjected to the higher powers. But when we come to 2020, there is more information that these lower powers are working independent.
Oh, we can't hear you now.
No, yeah.
We can't hear you, Jackie. You can't hear me either, I don't think.
Oh no.
Oh dear.
God, sound. Wow.
Okay.
Oh, they're connecting the headset.
Like this is what I see when we come to 2020.
Okay.
Like there is nothing like subjection.
So how does that?
Am I
Okay.
audible?
Yes. Sorry, I can hear you now. So how does that change?
Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I don't think she can hear me though. No. Jackie, can you hear me? Boaz? I think she can't hear through the headphones.
Am I audible? Mnanisikia?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you can't hear me though, can you? No, you can, Richard. I don't think she can though. Jackie,
Okay,
we can
it's
hear
okay.
you.
So what
Go on.
what I understand when we come to 2020, there is nothing like subjection in this. Like this is what I can say, and this is what we understand when we come to 2020.
So if we conclude is that lower powers are not bad, lower powers and higher powers are kind of two separate entities in that sense. If we're going to say fast and slow brain, the two aspects of the brain or aspects of humanity that work alongside each other, and the lower powers can't be controlled in the way that we thought they could because they're automatic almost. Would you say that? Yeah.
Yes.
And if that's the conclusion, then what does that do to our model of sin or overcoming sin? How does that help us overcome sin? Is that
Yes,
what we're
like this
thinking?
is okay. Have you finished?
Yes, go on.
Okay, like when we like this is still a challenge. Like when we required to live a sinless life, and we need to understand the true definition of sin. And what we have understood, or it is now like clear, like these lower powers are not bad like they are not bad. Now, when it comes to sin, if we do something consciously knowing it is wrong, then that is sin. Like if we act consciously because we know the lower powers and they're working, yes, independently of the higher powers, but they are working side by side as you have identified. When it comes to sin, it is this like it has been a challenge even to my own life, because we tend to understand once we are baptized, we need to walk in newness of life. So we see like sin, it is what you do consciously, and the work of the conscious, it is there to show us right and wrong, because the conscious is there to show us right and wrong. So when and these lower powers, what I see, they are there to protect us. When they are there to protect us in an emergency, then that is wrong. But our actions, when we do our actions contrary to the conscious, like the conscious will ever show us right and wrong, the information we have, if this information, we don't practice it consciously, then that is, we are sinning. Like we are sinning. That is what I can say.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Hi. When Elder Parminder was talking about the sin unto death and the sin not unto death, I think also adding that, let's just say you're triggered. So you do something that looks like sin to yourself and you feel terrible and people think it is, but you're triggered and it's not a sin unto death. So it's still the lower powers, the fast brain. It looks like sin, we feel bad, but it's not sin unto death. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Yes. It is true.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay, so you can correct me along the way if you feel I'm not correctly representing things. But what I believe is, before the study of nature of humanity, we thought sin was something mystical, something you can't overcome. But when Elder Parminder started introducing the study of nature of humanity, Elder Parminder, through this message, taught us to be accountable, that sin just does not happen. It's you can choose to sin. It's something that you do as a choice. Whereas in the past, we used to think, well, it's mystical and how do I overcome it? I don't know, things just happened. So what the nature of humanity did was it came and taught us to be accountable for the actions we do. So it taught us also that we have a higher power that can regulate the way we behave with our lower powers. So I think that was the first introduction, to the study of humanity, where it was teaching us that we accountable for what we do. Hence, we have a choice to sin or not to sin. Hence, we have a choice, and it was empowering, because where at one moment you thought, oh, I just sinned, this just happens, but now you knew, no, I can make decisions whether I want to do A, B, C, D or not. So it taught us to engage our higher powers. And then as the studies went on, the part is not the whole, and as you are mentioning, I think what we learned is that in as much as we thought we can subject the lower powers and think that, I think actually in the first study, Elder Parminder made it clear that the lower passions are not evil, because God has them. God has jealousy, God has anger, and God gave them to us. What really was the nail for me was that we can overcome sin, because we can engage our higher powers, to say, if I was an adulteress, I now can change from being an adulteress, or if, I was a liar, I can willfully change to say, I don't want to lie anymore. It's no longer something mystical. But those lower passions are good, if they are in their controlled manner, like if they are in their correct position, if they are below the higher power. And then as the studies went further, we realized that the higher power, the lower powers, which can be classified like first brain, they are good. Sometimes they have to really work independently of the higher powers, where you don't, like the examples you gave, you don't have to wait for a dog to bite you while you're reasoning, is this dog coming for me? Or if you need to run, you need to run, so I don't think there is anything different, but the message is expanding to show us that, look, at first the lower powers being subjected to the higher powers, it's not the whole, it's just a part. You understand? That the first study we had about have your lower powers in subjection, that was just a part. It's not the whole of nature of humanity. So these lower powers can work also independently, which is the first brain. There are times when it has to work, independently to make life-saving decisions, and then after you can look and realize, okay, I ran, but was it necessary to run? And then also when we're now studying, there's no need to be engaging the faster brain, because we need to enjoy the journey bit by bit, study and get more detail. So I think Emma's question was, what has changed? What I think is nothing has changed, but it has been a development of truth, helping us to realize that first we just thought, oh, if I can put my lower passions in control, then that's it, I'm done. But then Elder Pamela comes and says, that's not the whole. That's not the whole of nature of man. That was just a part. Now we need to further develop and go on with it. And then, these studies have gone further and further from the initial one. But what I think is actually a build up for us to see how we can become better human beings before the close of probation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think when I say it, like this is how the lower powers are working independently. When it comes to protection in an emergency, they are going to work in an independent way. But when it comes to character development, we need to consult the will. Like we have to make right judgment in terms of character development. And I've seen Curtis saying, like in the context of 1 John 5:17, like there is this sin unto death, like there is sin which is unto death, which Elder Pamela was trying to show us, like this is consciously knowing this is wrong and you do it. You find like the basic of this study, that is the primary where the study began from, we still remains. It is more like we have in 2020, like these lower powers, they as you have identified, they help us, like in an emergency, they work independently when there is an emergency. But when it comes to developing character, you have to reason. You have to reason, and that is the work of the higher powers. That is the will to make right judgment. So we will not throw away the will. We will not say like the lower powers are working independently, they are doing their own things, and the will is doing their own thing. They are working in an harmonious way. They are working in harmony. At one point, when there is an emergency, they work independently. When you are required to develop character, you have to consult the will. You have to like that's what I like. I'm trying to understand. Like we are not throwing away. It is more light, which is this is the advancement of this, what we were understanding in 2017, like the subjection. When we come to 2020, we find like the lower powers are working independently. When there is an emergency, they have to they don't consult the higher powers to make decision in an emergency. Another?
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, it's Ignatius. I don't know if we have touched anything to do with issues of the body causing a person to sin, and the person cannot, there's no power to do anything about it. How do we explain that part? I'm talking about issues to do with addiction, where the higher powers, which is the reasoning, the higher powers know that this is actually wrong, but the body is addicted to that particular act, and the body cannot stop doing it. It is an addiction. So choice has its place, yes, but choice will be saying no, but the body is saying yes, and choice subjects to the body. Where do we place that kind of scenario?
Okay, like when we have this the aspect of addiction, like the addiction is connected with this, like because we know like the higher powers, they're ever like on the right track. Then these lower powers, they are connected with addiction. And when they are connected with addiction, this like addiction is like you find like I'm lacking words to explain myself. Like when we have we from the beginning we saw like the lower powers, they have their seat in the body and they're working through the body. So this addiction, this is what like it is this closely connected with these lower powers, and like the body, what we because if it is addiction, this is like we are tending to, that is a habit which is repeated and it is resulting to that. And this habit which is repeated and it is resulting to addiction, you find like it is ever connected with these lower powers, and these lower powers, what we find, they are working through this body. So it is we need to consult the reason, like to follow the right channel. That is, if it is addiction, how can you come out of this addiction? It is a matter of choice. You make a choice, you come out of the addiction that you are in. And you see, like there is this, we have the aspect of the will in deciding not to continue in that addiction that you are. And this is like we like the okay like it is so like I'm lacking words actually to explain like addiction and this physical body. We need to know the laws. Like these laws, we are required to understand the laws that are governing our physical bodies. And these laws, when we understand these laws, then we are going to make decisions in accordance to these laws, so that this physical body will not control, yeah, like or not even control to, will not make a person to lean to the lower powers and make wrong choices.
But isn't the addiction, does that become a lust?
Yeah, lust, like you lust, like lust, you have a desire of something, then you lust for it. Then later, when you begin practicing If it is smoking, you practice until you have this addiction. Then when you have this addiction, you need to make a choice to leave this
So
practice
you make the
that you have
choice in the
practiced.
mind, and then the
Yes.
body is subjected to the mind. Because it says in Romans 6:12, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey the lusts therefore thereof.
Actually, the so complex, yeah. Yeah, there is a matter of choice in the aspect of, and like, I think when we, like what I understand, I don't know what I'm right, is this issue of the lower powers, it is the aspect of this in an emergence, they are working independently. But when it comes to character development, still we go back to the will to make the right choices. It's a matter of making
Yeah.
choices.
Can
And
I
then the
just
body
say
is
something?
Marshall has
subjected
his
to
hand up. Sorry, Phoedre. Are you looking at the hands?
Sorry,
Marshall,
no,
okay, so Marshall's got his hand up.
oh, right, I can't see it.
Marshall, your turn. Shall I look at the hands?
Okay.
Go on.
Can I contribute? Okay. I have a different take on addiction. Please don't take this as an attack, or it's just a different perspective. So my understanding of addiction is that I'll use this example: appetite, food. When we eat food, we eat to satisfy that longing, that desire to, that appetite, that lower passion, yeah. And when we eat and satisfy that, there's also another aspect in eating, which is food comes with tastes, with you know, whether it's salt, it's sour, it's sweet, it does something to us. So if it's nice, you enjoy it, you like it. And then when you go forward with considering addiction, what I have come to understand is that addiction comes from a place of pain, meaning a person can eat food, and I think you'll relate to this term. Most people, when you ask them who are addicted to food, when they eat it, if you ask them why do you continuously eat, they will tell you, they use this term comfort eating. So they're being comforted, they're being soothed. And what's being comforted or soothed is the pain. It's not physical pain, but emotional pain that someone is running away from or escaping that pain from. So this is where I have a different perspective. So addiction, yes, you might say choice, choose not to, but until that pain is dealt with, that individual continues to eat or comfort eat, running away from that pain. So choice, yes, plays a part, but I would say it's not the whole it's not the whole story.
Are you saying it's like a trauma, Zulani?
Yes, if we go further, would go that far.
Can I just add to that, please, just quickly?
Yes.
Yeah, no.
I work with ladies mostly who are addicts whose child is born also an addict. They cannot choose to not be addicts. So, like has just been said, I think if you can't choose to be an addict as a baby, it's you want more of what you been given because of the pain it's creating without it. So I think there's something bigger and deeper that needs to be looked into with regards to addiction instead of, just thinking it's about choice and it's sin. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it. Can I say that? I think in 2017, that was the beginning. So we just said it's choice, you choose, but then the message has also developed, like I said. So in 2017, it was black and white. You have the power to overcome sin. It's your choice. But then also, it's not. I think as we further go on, I think it's a broader subject, where you will say, okay, choice is the major thing. I think it's the first step of in realization that, okay, I have this problem of comfort eating, for example, what Marshall gave. I have this problem of comfort eating. And I don't want to continue doing it because it is affecting my health. So you're now engaging your higher powers and making a decision that you don't want it. But how we are going to start implementing that, that desire to stop and all, I think that's where you just don't say, you just wake up and choose. There are things you have to do. You might say, okay, I'm going to intermittent fast, I'm going to start an exercise regime, I'm going to, start things. But then you realize you also have traumas. You need to deal with those traumas. So all these are other things that are connected to your progress to overcome. So one thing I want to correct is things don't just miraculously happen. We need to move away from this thinking of I've prayed and then it just has miraculously happened. Oh, now I've overcome this. Atomic Habits teaches us that, well, there are habits I've been doing all my life, and I just don't wake up and break them. You have to change your routine. And there are some measures that need to be put in place, whether you're going to get help, professional help and all, but things need to change for things to change. Things don't just miraculously happen. So if I have anger issues, okay, and my anger issues are stemming from childhood abuse or traumas I've gone through, no matter how much I'm going to kneel and pray and say, Lord, help me, but I need to go back and address those traumas and issues to then start on a clean plate. So I think there's something wrong about the way we view Christianity, that things just are done automatically. There's no effort for on my part to work towards overcoming something. Things don't just happen. I think we need to understand there's an effort we have to put, to get to a certain point. For example, with life, we know if you want to drive, you have to read that highway code. You have to go for driving lessons for you to end up getting that driver's license and driving. But when it comes to religious things, we just think things just happen, and I'm challenging that thought to say, no, if I have an addiction, if the first port of call is, do I want to stop it? So that's the choice. That's what Elder Pamida gave us in 2017, the power of choice. I want to stop it. But how am I going to stop it? The fact that I said I want to stop it doesn't mean it's going to stop. What am I going to do? If I eat because I'm idle and I have nothing to do, I need to change my routine to start getting things in place to keep me busy, to keep me away from those things. If it's my association, I need to start changing. So there is something that I have to do towards also my own salvation. That's what I think.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think we
I saw
got to
Blessing's
understand.
hand.
Okay, I think Blessing and Charity had their hand up. They went down though.
Sorry, I can't see any hands.
I know. That's why I'm telling you. They had it up.
Yeah.
It's gone down. I've got my hand up as well. But
Oh, okay.
Yes.
go on.
I just wanted to say, like, I don't know much about addiction, but I do know that addiction is mental ill health.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem with your body, it's a problem with your mind. You are actually mentally unwell. And once you have an addiction, you need professional help. That's what I want to say.
I was going to add to that. I think that this is illness. And if we look at illness, there are laws of health, but there are certain things that you have to do if someone's ill that you wouldn't ordinarily have to do if someone was in their right health physically. And it's the same with mental health. So it's not a normal situation and addiction when it comes to talking about overcoming sin. It's complicated. And the example that Natalie gave with the babies, it's not a mental health issue. They're physically addicted to drugs now. So there is a physical and a mental component to addiction, which I think has to be considered, that it's out of, it's not normal, because the body does get addicted to things, alcohol, smoking, even food, even different things. It has a physical effect on the body, but it is a mental, as Marshall said, it's a mental illness condition of the mind, which is a symptom of pain often and trauma, which is what we were saying. So it's not a normal everyday occurrence. And Leon has put in the chat, the subconscious mind has a goal to soothe the pain and avoid the feeling of pain through some sort of habit until it is rewired. Conscious effort will be an ongoing struggle. So you can make all these choices to stop it. But as I think Rose touched on that, if you've got a problem, underlying problem from childhood or an issue that you're still dealing with, it's not going to change. You're going to fall back into it because it's still masking that pain that hasn't been dealt with, perhaps. So I think when we do behave in a way that we think is bad or other people think is bad, I think it's a call to us to go back and say, what issue have I still got that I need to sort out? Because it's still not okay to treat people badly. And I think that's where we're coming from with equality, that the choice is always to forbear and to, how do I treat my neighbor? And if that's your actions, your words are impacting your neighbor in a negative way, then I think it's a call to go back and say, what do I still need to work on? What's my issue? And it's all called for us to learn about ourselves and our own pain and how to cope with that pain and how to deal with it. Because we've all got things that we're still working on, I think. And that's in this time period, it seems a lot of people have emotional issues which are very deep, and it's for their benefit to bring them out and to get rid of them, because it's affecting how they live and how they think. And if they don't face that issue, and some people may never face that here, I'm not sure if everyone's going to get things, I'm sure we're not going to get things dealt with. There'll still be things that we need to do when we get to heaven. This is not straightforward, but it gives us mercy, I think, with each other and with ourselves. But it also, as you said, Jackie, I think it doesn't really change the model, that we still have choice, and that the higher powers, the slow brain, is there to help us think things through and to change as well. That's what it's for, to help us not what it's for, but the function in overcoming sin is still that we have to slow down and think about it. So people have put in the chat, I don't know if Deidre can see, shall I read that out?
I can't.
Thank you for everyone's patience. Curtis says, when you distinguish between physical and mental, what do you mean? Sorry. Okay, so you mean when I said about the body has, well, like the baby being born addicted to drugs, because it has those drugs in its system, it affects the baby. So it has a physical effect on that baby, that baby is born addicted to it without any choice, without any mental trauma the baby has. So there is something about the physical body being affected by the substances put in it, and that affects the mind. I'm not an expert on all those connections, but I know that there is, just because we say, it's a very simple picture to say that the lower and higher powers are housed in the physical body and it's just the house. But our interaction with our physical body is more complex than just living in a building. So we're not intimately attached to the building by veins and arteries or nervous system. And the nervous system, we didn't get to the nervous system, but that's complicated. So the parasympathetic nervous system is the physical house. So physical is not the body. Physical is also the body. Yeah. So Ignatius put 2017, physical is not the body, but when we get to 2020, physical is also the body. So there's something about, I don't know, actually, physical is not the body. Yeah, when we said lower powers were not the body, but they're connected intimately to the body, just like the higher powers. We don't even know how our body produces a thought. A thought is something outside the body, but it's produced by a physical mechanism. It's complicated, but so Natalie's put, what if the neighbor actions is sin unto death, not the person's reaction? I don't know if I understand that, and then body-mind connection. Yeah, so there's a body-mind connection, which is very complicated. Oh, yeah. So Curtis says, yeah, I meant blessing. Sorry. So besides the baby born, he mentioned how addiction is a matter related to the mind, not the body. Physical, just seeking clarification on what he meant. Oh, do you want to respond to that, blessing?
I was saying that it's not a situation of the body just wanting what it wants. Someone is actually imbalanced. It's a neuropsychological disorder. That's the point I was making.
What does that mean?
Neuropsychological. It affects your brain. So there's a relationship with the body, but I was saying the source of the problem is in the brain. I wasn't dealing with, like, some of the complications that Natalie and I think Emma then brought out of a baby being impacted by their parents' choices. I was mainly talking about an adult person, that the way you get into an addiction, it's a problem with your mind. It's not like your body just starts doing things and then you are addicted. I don't know if that clarifies things for you, Kurt.
Blessing, I want to just say, because you commented about me, that even a child that once the child is weaned off the drugs in the hospital, for the rest of their life, they can have a tendency towards addiction and drugs, just the same like an alcoholic mother or father when they have children.
Okay, I think like when we were trying to understand, we know the inherent tendencies and cultivated tendencies. So when a child is born, we find like there is this inherited tendencies that the child inherits from the parent. And there is this aspect of cultivating tendencies when this person is going to act an independent person without being the person is not inheriting. The child is growing and begin to cultivate these tendencies. Then this physical body, like we have this helpful living. I wanted to add, like we need to understand the laws that are governing our natural or our physical bodies. And these laws, when this is the aspect of the healthy form, because this body is the physical, the living machinery. And this living machinery, what we know, like this closely connected working with the inner man, that is the higher part, that is the inner man. So when the physical body is affected, like this caused me to remember some writings of Ellen White, like Moses, the great historian, that is from one of her writings. She's saying like Moses, the great historian, never wrote anything like of death of a child or a child born an imbecile. But we find like in that history, when she was trying to understand things, is not the way more light with us. Like she was not understanding this this anatomy. She was not understanding properly, but she gave us what she knew in dispensation. We find like this physical body, we have children, we bear children, and they are going to inherit some tendencies, and they have their cultivated tendencies they are going to cultivate. So it is like this study, it is so complex. To me, I say like it is so complex, and it needs more time to study and understand some things in the more light as we develop, the message is developing. Yes, I'm seeing a hand from Primrose.
Okay, I wanted to mention something about neural pathways,
Yes.
So in children, when I'm still pregnant, there are things that are being written on my child's brain as well, neural pathways that are being set up. And then there are things that they will learn as they are born. So for example, I've never taken alcohol before. The moment I take alcohol, it's a strange path and it's light, it's faint, in my brain. And that pathway, it's easier for me to erase it and delete it, because it's still fine. But then the more I take alcohol, that pathway becomes stronger and stronger. So I want to give an example of something that a methodology we use in the movement. Repetition deepens the impression. right? We all understand that one. So the first time you study something, it's strange. Even the first time Elder Paminda presented this study on the nature of humanity, it was strange. People even said he's teaching us things from his Indian background, and it was strange. It was strange. It was strange. It was something that this movement had never comprehended, because we always thought sin was something mystical, and we needed the Holy Spirit to come and help us to overcome and everything. And now Elder Paminda is coming to tell us that, look, you can control what you think and do. It was strange. It wasn't palatable food, you know. It's like taking olives or molasses for the first time. It's strange. Okay, so it was strange. So at that moment, you can just say, oh, Elder Paminda is leading us astray, and then you walk away and you soon forget about this. But the more you want to indulge in these studies, you know, repetition deepens the impression, you know. And soon it becomes your nature to, you now start to defend it. You now start to teach it, you know, something that was once strange. You now start to own it and start changing your own life. So all I'm saying is, the issue is about the neural pathways that are in our brains. So with addiction, you know, it had to start from somewhere. We don't want to deny that addiction, it had to start from somewhere. I know there is trauma. I know that there is trauma that might make it start, but it had to start from somewhere. That desire to soothe your stress, eating olives and cheese, it had to start from somewhere, you know. And then you, after eating olives and cheese for the first time, you're like, ooh, this feels so good. And then the next time you're going to do it and do it. So what's happening is, the more you do something, but I'm not saying olives and cheese is bad, but the more you do something, the neural pathway becomes deeper and stronger. And when you try to stop it, because that neural pathway is now deeper and stronger, it feels impossible. You can't do it. And if you need to seek medical attention or assistance, you know, do whatever you need to do. But it's because there's a deep neural pathway that's created in your brain to do something over and over again, you know. Your mind is programmed that way. So even a child, like the quotation you said, there are inherited tendencies and cultivated tendencies, you know. So inherited tendencies, sometimes if you don't cultivate them, they just die a natural death, you know. But then the more you start cultivating something, it grows, it becomes thicker. So my contribution is still, you know, we need to identify where something started from. And if you can't identify where your trauma started from that led you to an addiction, you need to seek medical assistance. You need to see a psychologist or whoever, because if we keep denying that there is a root cause to this, then there is no way we can heal. You understand? And that's where the choice lies. That you need to choose to say, look, I'm a drug addict. But where did it start from? And do I want to change it? And then you seek ways of changing it. Some things are beyond yourself. You need assistance, you know, to get rid of something, you know. But it's all about the neural path that was developed, you know, continually. It has to stop. That root has to be starved for it to die. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to stop there. It's getting on. That's kind of like well food for thought there, because our thoughts really become our realities. We keep on thinking about the same thing, it becomes real to us. You know, we can actually begin to manifest that thought that we have about ourselves. And I think thoughts are also make up of some kind of chemistry. So we release, like when you're happy, you're releasing dopamine. Is it dopamine? Yeah, dopamine. And so if we begin, I think if we begin to break everything down, we can begin to change the thoughts that we think and become to start thinking the thoughts that God has of us. And then instead of always going back and reliving that trauma again, we can just change that trauma without having to relive it constantly and just put God's word in it. But anyway, I think we could carry on with this, but another time because it's nearly, is it my, oh, sorry, it's 2 minutes, oh, it's nearly 1 o'clock.
Yeah, Jackie, do you want to pray to close?
Yeah.
Before we switch the
Yes.
video. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Time. I think we have been blessed. Let us pray. Our dear God in heaven, we want to thank you for this class that we have had. It has given us more information and we have understood much. Thank you for the plan of salvation that you planned for us. And thank you for the Midnight Cry message that has shaped us to what we are today. Bless us till we meet again. We ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.